Welcome home, where we provide information, inspiration, and motivator after motivator after motivator here on America's Next. I have Chaka Phaire here with me today. How you doing, Chaka?
I am doing phenomenal by the grace of God. How are you?
I'm doing great, absolutely swell. Did I pronounce your last name correctly?
Yes, you have. Chaka
Okay,
Phaire.
okay. Chaka, I'm happy to have you here with us today. You took time out of your busy schedule to be here with us to share your story, and I gotta say, it makes an impact when you decide to share your story. You'd be surprised how many adults, that's people over the age of 30, are intimidated to get on someone's show, someone's platform, and talk about their journey leading up to the work that they do today. And so I just want to say thank you at the beginning of this episode. We have a comment. Chastity Curry's in the building. She says hello.
How you doing, Chastity?
Yeah, and I just want to say for anyone who's tuned in from Roku TV, Apple TV, Android TV, Facebook, YouTube, Amazon Fire, we appreciate you. Thank you very much. And without further ado, Chaka, where you from?
I am from officially Harlem, but then I really was raised in the Bronx, and now I reside in the planet of Brooklyn.
The planet of Brooklyn. Why do you call it the planet of Brooklyn?
Well, Brooklyn is so huge. That's actually from MC Light,
Okay.
a old school rapper who referred to Brooklyn as the planet of Brooklyn. But Brooklyn is the largest borough. It is the most diverse. If you've ever been to Brooklyn, you can find bits of Harlem, you can find bits of the Bronx, you can find bits of Queens and bits of Brooklyn all in the same borough. Without leaving New York, you can touch almost all five boroughs.
Wow. Are there any areas of Brooklyn, like if someone was visiting New York and they're not from Brooklyn or not from New York, any sites that you would recommend people to go out and see?
Well, Brooklyn has so many different sites and things. I love Bed-Stuy because it reminds me most of Harlem. But there's so many different interesting places. There's Coney Island. You have Juniors. You have Brooklyn has so many historic places to visit. So many churches. Cornerstone Baptist Church, Emmanuel Baptist Church. Some of these, Cornerstone was one of the stops on the Underground Railroad.
Really?
Yes,
Hold on,
there's
hold on,
so
hold on.
much.
What's Cornerstone? Talk to me about that.
Cornerstone Baptist Church
Okay.
is on the corner of Lewis and Madison, and it was a stop on the Underground Railroad. I believe Bridge Street AME Church was as well. So in Bed-Stuy, there is so much rich history coming from that area. There is just so much in that area that you can trace back. You can basically trace back your lineage, and you can still visit these places today. And they're still very historic in terms of how they're kept. Some of them are landmark districts, so they look very similar to the way that they looked when they were first built.
Can you talk to me about your childhood, growing up in Harlem when you were there? What was your early childhood like? Let's say around the age of 5 years old. What was going on around in your world?
Well, and in my world at that time, there was, I grew up in the 70s with Parliament Funkadelic.
Okay.
So Parliament Funkadelic was played in the background. At that time, we lived in a brownstone, and my family owned a good portion of 119th Street between Lenox and Adam Clayton Powell. So we had another building that was where I was raised in. That was 124th and Madison. But when I was later on, and I'll probably get to that, my parents divorced. So I spent some time with my father in the summer times in Harlem, and we owned half the block. So I would ride my big wheel at that time. And for some of you who might not know what a big wheel is, it's exactly that. It's like a bike that you kind of sit down on the floor with. It has a huge big wheel in the front and two wheels on the side. And I
Yeah.
would ride this big wheel down the block and say, my family owns this one, but not this one, but this one, and this one. So, you know, I talk about that because that is some of the that speaks a lot about my motivation. My grandmother told us whoever graduated college would get a brownstone. And after I graduated college, I found that out only after I was in college. But instead of me checking with her, I knew that those brownstones were always going to exist. So after I graduated, I called her up and said, Grandma, you know, I just graduated college. You told the story about these brownstones. Do you still have them? And she told me that she just got rid of the last one 2 weeks ago. So
Wow.
the entire family ended up losing the brownstones for different reasons. And the last ones that she kept, she could no longer keep because she was a senior, an elder statesman, and they were running game on her all day. So you had people who broke into the house, who was renting it as if it was their property, and she would come there and have to deal with all of these different things, and it got too much for her, and it started to affect her health. So she decided to let it go. But you know, it is a huge tragedy in terms of wealth transference and generational wealth that didn't necessarily go in the way that it should. But what it did is it certainly motivated me to gain the success that I felt like I was denied as a result of these brownstones being sold and the difficulty that I had in my childhood. So when I was 5 years old, we lived in that brownstone, and then later on we moved to the Bronx. So when we moved to the Bronx, my parents were together. Everything was going well, and I was a promising student in school. So I showed some potential in terms of academia, and I took pride in getting good grades. Then,
Hold on. Hold on. I am feeling a lot of different types of ways right now, just at what I've heard so far out of your story. And everybody out there, if you're in the building, please put the emojis into the chat, hit the like button, hit the share button. Let Facebook and YouTube know that we're having a valuable conversation here by providing your reactions. When you said that your family owned half the block, my mind was just doing fireworks for you and your whole family. That these properties, which are so valuable today, your family owned several of them. And I wanted to ask, about your mentality when you knew that your family owned those houses, and you said it, you were riding on your big wheel and you could count, the houses that your family owned. And so that must have did a lot for your confidence. It must have made you feel like you had something to inherit, you know. And I think that inheritance is connected to one's personal confidence and self-esteem. Do you have brothers and sisters?
I absolutely do. I have 7 brothers and sisters, so I come from a very big family.
Okay. There is an almost decades old narrative about how there was a time in America where our families owned a lot of property. And somehow, through what looks like some type of magic, we no longer own those properties. And it's not just your family, it's families clear across America, where it's like a couple generations ago, there was so much ownership. I think it was Dick Gregory who pointed out that, back in the early, 60s or that era, we had so much home ownership. And now today in 2021, we have just less than we had back then. And so in all these years, we've made not only no progress, but we've made negative progress in terms of home ownership. And I think it's stories like those, what happened to your grandmother, that we need to understand when we look at our fellow community members and say, hey, why don't you own anything? Something happened to your grandmother's generation that that prevented her from transferring that generational wealth. Did you ever find any more details out about that story? Like, did rich people come into the neighborhood and make offers that she couldn't refuse? Were there anything like that going on? Do you know?
Not to my knowledge. From the story that I heard, and this is an evolving story, because each family member that I speak to has a different perspective on exactly what took place. So right now, where I am with the story, meaning that the next time I talk to you, the story may change and may evolve. But it was lost. A lot of the brownstones were lost due to the family members not taking care of things and paying taxes, and losing them through simple means. Where if they were, I can't say whether they were taught or whether they just slacked in terms of their responsibility. But they ended up losing the brownstones for very, very simple and very menial and small things. But I think another thing, another dynamic that was present, that sometimes we find with this generation that had some of this generational wealth, is that they would try to pass it down to the heirs, and the heirs would be interested in doing their own thing and living their own life. So I have a friend of mine whose father had a thriving uniform business, and he was trying to pass it to my friend and his brother, and my friend and his brother wanted no parts of it. They wanted to go to college and they wanted to live their own life, and they did not want to be a part of the family business. They wanted to explore themselves and their own talents. So I think that somewhere along the lines, the lineage was broken by this newfound independence of the younger generation. So in the Bible speaks about that this generation will be wiser but weaker. And I think about that all the time, because if you pass a young child an iPad, they can work it like nobody's business, almost like they created it. However, when it comes to emotional maturity and emotional damage, they don't seem to be able to deal with things with the same intestinal fortitude that we had. And I think that that's also because we got an opportunity to practice. We were a lot more social. People said a lot more things that hurt our feelings. We had more time to rebound and practice those things, so that sticks and stones did not indeed break our bones, and words certainly did not harm us. Not that bad. So now when we look at the younger generation, and it seems like if you insult them too hard, then they fall apart. But I think that speaks to where the generation is, and each generation has their own independent strengths and weaknesses, and we are looking at them from an old school lens where that is considered to be a weakness, but they have a lot of strengths. This younger generation also does not tolerate protocol in the same way that we used to. So we used to say, well, listen, you don't speak when your elders don't listen to adult conversations, don't be in grown people's mouths, things of that nature that this generation did not experience. So they were almost born with their own perspective that they want to inject with the same equality as adults. And I think that I believe one thing is that characteristics, they are neither positive or negative. It depends on the context in which they are placed in. So these characteristics that we're talking about, placed in this Black Lives Matter movement, has become a huge strength, because these young people are now at the forefront saying, we are not going to do things the same way the previous generation did it. We're going to do it our way, and we are not going to take the same things that you guys took, because we are not you.
So let's connect these dots a little bit, because I took some very powerful information out of what you just said. let's look at it for a minute. Everybody out there, walk with me here. So our families a couple generations ago, they were following protocol to a T. They were unified, maybe to the point of stress, maybe to the point of distress, but they were unified. They had ownership, and then some new frequency came over people that encouraged them to break the mold, to do something different. Because when that generational, whether it be the houses or the businesses, it came time for those things to be passed down. The children were saying no, even back then. So even in the 70s, it seems like our people have been saying no. And when I say our people, I'm talking about anyone for whom the shoe fits. Doesn't matter if you're black, white, Hispanic, Chinese, or whatever diversity in between. There were new generations who began to say, no, I'm going to break the mold. No, I don't want the family business. No, I don't want your old brownstone. I'm going to go out into the world. I'm going to go to this university and I'm going to strike out on my own and figure out a new path. I'm going to be a trailblazer. And that has broken some barriers down for us that we could not have broken down if we were continuing to follow protocol and deal with the stresses and oppresses that we had been doing in the past. So, okay, so maybe we lost a few houses, but we're gaining some civil positioning that we would not have gained had we not began to live under a new paradigm. Do you agree with that to an extent?
Yeah, I certainly agree. I mean, I think that a lot of the young people are rebellious in nature. So whatever is going on, they're going to rebel against it at that time. Now, each generation continues to rebel just a little bit more and a little bit more. And those incremental rebellions end up pushing society either forward or backward, depending on how you decide to look at it. But I think that the older generation, while they practiced civil disobedience and did a whole lot of things in terms of our civil rights, they asked John Lewis, out of all of the things that he's done, what was his one greatest regret? And he said that he did not teach the young people how to lead. And I think that that is something that has not been effectively passed down, nor did we gain the appreciation for the things that we have even to this day. There are so many parents that provide their children with everything that they themselves didn't have and expect their children to be appreciative of that soul experience that their children have. The only reason why these things are a big deal to the parents is because they benefited from two perspectives. They benefited from their individual perspective of not having, and then they benefited from now having and being able to pass that down to their children. Their children who are at the receiving end only benefit from the perspective of always having.
That's right.
You can't expect them to show appreciation to something to them that appears to be something that they're supposed to have.
That's right.
That we are selfish by nature and we have to be taught appreciation. So even to this day, we have to be taught to appreciate our lives. There are so many of us who are climbing the economical ladder and they are peeking over their shoulder and seeing what their neighbor has and is not satisfied with what God has provided for them in their lives. So as long as you don't have an attitude of gratitude, you're always going to be ungrateful. You're always going to feel like you are lacking something. And for our young people, that happens all of the time. As each young person is looking over at their neighbor and saying, I wish I had what they had. And the very person that they're looking at is looking at someone else and saying, I wish I had what they had. So they are not even appreciating what it is that they have.
Is that a lack of leadership in your perspective? The constant looking at your peers and wanting what they have as opposed to paying attention to your life with appreciation. Is that lack of personal leadership? Is that a lack of leadership as you talked about earlier?
I think it's a combination of things. I think it's a lack, not necessarily of leadership, but of teaching. I think that we live in a society that shows so much. So a lot of our children are being raised by the television or a screen of some kind. They say
Mhm.
before the age of 3, I'm not sure exactly what the statistics are, but they say that the average 3-year-old is able to identify the M for McDonald's.
Yeah.
So, my son, I hope I'm not outing him, but, one of his first words was need money because he
Mhm.
wanted to go get ice cream. So we
Mhm.
teach our children to be consumers at a very early age and to basically, I'm going to take a step back for a little bit.
Okay.
Television was not made for entertainment.
Mhm.
Television was made to centralize us so that we can sit down long enough to be sold something.
Whoa. Ladies and
So
gentlemen, if you haven't already, I want you to tag somebody, text somebody, and get somebody else into the building because Chaka is making some connections tonight that really speak toward the experience that we're having. I want to talk more. I want to talk more about our lack of education when it comes to leadership, though, which you spoke about a couple minutes ago, because I'm wondering if in the paradigm shift of not wanting to follow the same protocols as the generation before us. I mean, I'm talking all the way down to not wanting to eat soul food anymore. You have a lot of the younger generations that they don't want collard greens, macaroni and cheese, and fried chicken. They want new things. They don't even want grandma's cooking anymore. And so has that come with lack of a taste for leadership? Do do the new generations of us have less of a taste for leadership? And is that why we're constantly looking at one another and following all the different trends that come along? Have we lost our taste for leadership? And could that be a positive thing? Speak on that.
honestly, I don't necessarily think that we've lost our leadership. I think
And,
that
and hold on, I'm sorry, not to cut you off. I mean, have we lost our taste for having a leader? Meaning, we don't want a Malcolm, we don't want a Martin anymore. We all want to be Malcolms and Martins. Are we dealing with that reality? Everybody wants to be a leader now.
I don't necessarily see that. I see that our leaders have the society has made a negative example of leadership in the Black community. So
Okay.
whenever a leader emerges, society finds a way to knock them off of that pedestal
Mhm.
or erase them totally, find some way to stop people from believing in them. I don't. There was, I think it was Judas in the Black Messiah. Did you see that
Okay.
movie?
Yeah.
One of the things I think in that movie where they was like, you can give them everything, but don't give them a Messiah.
Hmm.
So as long as there is not one person for us to look to for that leadership, then we can be sold different things. Our attention is no longer on um, following someone who has the master plan. That I'm not even sure that there are a lot of leaders at this point. um, I'm not sure exactly why things are the way that they are now in terms of how society has seemed to morph, not to necessarily look for that type of Messiah kind of leadership.
Hmm.
But I still believe that it is possible, and I think that it's necessary. I mean, I hope I'm not preempting the discussion. I feel like I'm talking more about society, but
Yeah.
I'm gonna come back. I'm gonna come back there.
Sure.
But
Sure.
I think that in terms of unity in the Black community, I have very, very strong views. And I believe that each person has, God has blessed all of us with different skills, different strengths. But once again, instead of us appreciating the strengths that we have inside of ourselves, we look for the skills that we don't have and admire those things. Meanwhile, everybody is looking like this and nobody is looking at their plate and seeing
Mhm.
exactly what it is that they have. Now, the reason why that's important is because in order for us to unify as a race and as a society, It takes all kind of people doing all kinds of jobs, but somehow or another, there are some people who we argue so much about who should take the lead. Whoever should take the lead is the person who sees the problem in the way that they see it. All of us have and see problems that bother us.
That's right.
The fact that those problems have been birthed inside of us, that lets us know this is a problem for you to solve.
That's right.
So only you have the perspective that you have that makes it as annoying to you as it is.
That's right.
The problem is that we should all go out and solve the problems as we know it. However, we have to come back to the table and see exactly which efforts are yielding the most fruit so that we can then deploy resources to the most efficient parts, and we still maintain that togetherness even in our separateness.
That's right.
So once we do that, then I believe that we can come together, because otherwise we're going to be arguing over who has the right solution. Some people are going to be saying, oh, well, we need to, this battle needs to be forged through social media. Some other people are going to say, no, it needs to be forged this way. And we're going to sit here and argue. And while we're arguing, we're not doing anything for the progression of the problem, and we're not moving the needle. So we have to get from the point of discussion to action to implementation.
There is disunity in our communities due to a lack of education and inspiration around what leadership truly is. I want to ask you, before we go into the break, what were your thoughts about life as you graduated from high school? What did you intend to do with your life as you graduated high school?
I wanted to get out of my neighborhood.
Wow.
That was what I wanted to do. I tell this story all the time. I am 50 years old. I'm about to be 51 next week. And in the neighborhood that I came from, the average lifespan of an African American, according to what I saw, I'm not saying any statistics or whatever, was 25.
Wow.
So my brother passed at 25. So psychologically, I did not expect to live past 25. But I knew what that neighborhood was doing to men my age, and I wanted no part of it. So I had a situation where it was unclear whether I was going to go to college or not. And at that point, I said, well, I don't care what I'm doing. I'm not staying around here. That's because right. I see what this neighborhood does to men or young men who are approaching 25. And I didn't want that to be me. So I was like, if I got to go to the army, whatever it is I got to do, I have got to leave this area.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're talking to Chaka Phaire, and I'm really thoroughly enjoying this conversation. But don't you guys move, because after the break, we're going to talk about more on what he did with his life. Right after this break, you guys sit tight. America's Next Motivator, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday at 9 p.m. Eastern. America's Next Motivator, hosted by me, Cedric Riley, sponsored by the Pride Empowerment Network and our viewership. And we're back. Chaka, how you feeling out there?
I'm feeling wonderful. What about yourself?
I'm feeling great. I see that we have some folks in the building. I want to say hello to Robert out there. Lola is out there, Lola Payne. and Chastity's still out there with us. Listen, I appreciate you all. Tony Knox is in the building, and Roberta Garrett is here as well. So I thank each and every one of you. If we're talking about something that resonates with you, drop a comment in the chat. Drop a question in the chat. I find this to be a very powerful discussion tonight. And Chaka is really bringing the mentality that we need to consider. Ari Sky is in the building as well. She says, hello. Hey, how you doing, Ari? And so Chaka, talk to me a little bit about the discord that resulted in the life expectancy of 25 years old. I think that's a tragedy. And what you're saying, it rings true. There's a popular young rap artist right now. His name is G Herbo. And G Herbo's most recent album, it came out last week, or this week rather, is called 25. And it's called 25 because he didn't expect to live beyond the age of 25. Now, this is 2021. And you're talking about in your time that you were not expecting to see life past 25 years old. So talk to me about that environment. What was going on?
Well, there was everything that you can imagine in an urban environment. I mean, I think I painted the picture of prosperity in my young years, because that's what it was. However, later on, my parents got divorced. And when they got divorced, I'm half Haitian and half American. My mother is Haitian, and I'm not sure whether this was true or at least true in my mother's life, but my father was believed to have told her, you'll never be nothing without me. So she made it her life's goal to prove that she was going to be able to make it without my father and without any assistance. And she was successful in doing that. However, we saw far more trauma as a result of that experience, because we did not necessarily benefit from all of the help that was out there, because she was busy trying to show that she can make it on her own. So that led to us having nights without eating. Damon Wayans made a joke and said, when I was so poor, we had sleep for dinner. Those were things that I can recall. I can recall going to bed and going to sleep in the daytime because the lights were out, and we would take our bath the night before because it would be too cold in the morning, and we would have to boil water in order for us to take a bath. I mean, the stories that I'm sharing, while it sounds like it's somewhere outside of America, there are still people who are going through this very same thing right now. So my experience is by no way unique. There are so many people who are experiencing food insecurities and so many other things that I've experienced. One thing about this population is they are phenomenal at not showing you all that they are going through.
That's right.
And they look just like you and I, and you probably would not be able to pick them out of a crowd because they do such a good job not staying underneath the radar and not gaining attention. So I was one of those people. So even now, when I tell my story, people who've known me for a good portion of my life are like, wow, I really didn't know that about you.
That's right.
But these are the things that that we've experienced. My family was homeless. I mean, there was so many different things. My life has taken so many different turns. But the biggest and most important thing, which I started to say, was I'm 50.
Yeah.
And that means I've lived 2 lifetimes in the hood.
Right. That's right.
So I didn't expect to be here, but I'm here twice.
That's right.
So, and I thank God for that, because I believe that God spared my life, and it was through God's hand that have steered me in the ways that I should have went to avoid these pitfalls. So, I am dedicating my life to God moving forward. During the times where my mother was, she would get money. Mm-hmm. And when she would get the money, she would put it in a collection plate. And we would say, what is wrong with you?
Right.
Because here we are
Ooh.
starving and you putting your money in a collection plate.
Sacrifice.
Yes, but I didn't understand it at the time. You
Mm.
know, I didn't understand it at the time. I think that she was sowing into our futures by doing that,
Yeah.
you know, by tithing even on money that she herself did not have. You know, most of us, if not all of us, are successful at
Right.
this point. So, you know, in terms of me going back to the lifestyle that I came from, I can't ever see that happening. I
You
mean, you
know,
know, at this point, I am Bill Gates rich,
yeah.
even though I'm not rich.
Right.
But from where I came from, not having being able to, you know, it's the small things that you end up appreciating.
Yes.
And I appreciate being able to go to my faucet and turn on the water and hot water comes out, as opposed to me taking pots after pots and boiling and boiling and boiling. You know, I thank God for knowing where my next meal is coming from. I thank God for not being so angry, um, being on the train, being pushed around and bumped and all of this other stuff, and carrying the level of anger that I carried around. I thank God for having the ability now to be human.
Mm.
I grew up at a time where you were not allowed to cry. So, you know, you were supposed to be tough.
Not being able to cry and living a life where you're supposed to be tough. Would you say that that hardened young men and young women and made them commit almost inhumane behaviors? I mean, what type of things do you do to people when you haven't cried in years, and when you haven't had, a hug or a proper compliment in years? Do you become a savage, as they say? You're on demon time. Do you transform into somebody who thinks that life should be taken for granted and that somebody's life should be taken?
Absolutely. Hurt people hurt people.
That's right.
And we cannot expect for people to see past their own pain to see someone else's pain.
That's right.
So we have to deal with some of the factors that are continuing to create young men like myself, you
Mhm.
know, or young men who may not be like myself. I was just thinking about some of the rappers like uh who are
Little baby.
Jay-Z,
Jay-Z.
you know,
Okay.
Jay-Z, 50 Cents, 50 Cent, you know, so Nas.
Mhm.
All of these brothers came up very hard,
That's right.
but their circumstances have changed and now they're able to be human. So these
Mhm.
are factors that exist in every single man. It's just that their circumstances does not allow them to be human. Now I have circumstances that allow me to be human, that allow me to cry, that allow me to tell people I love them. You
So
know,
what you're saying is it's got my gears turning, because I can clearly see that some of us are 25 and 30 years old, but if we haven't gotten our lives to a position where we can actually feel human, then it's like we haven't actually lived life yet. I wonder how many people are adults based on their ID, but they still have not lived life yet. And so we're raising awareness inside of this episode that there is a calling on your life. Each and every person who's tuned in and who's not tuned in, there's a calling on your life that you have a way of answering. You've got to find a way to answer that call. And that's what I want to talk to you about. How did you answer the call in your life so that you could achieve humanity, so that you could experience the stress relief, the joy, the happiness of being able to live a secure life? Church, for instance, how were you able to build a relationship with God that enabled you to get out of that dangerous environment? What did God do for you? Talk to us.
I prayed every day that God would make me successful financially,
Mm.
because during that time, money was the answer to everything. If I had more money, then the water would be hot. If I have more money, then the conditions that I lived in would be better. If I have more money, I would have better clothes to put on. If I had more money, I'd be able to buy a car and not have to get on the crowded number 4 train and be bumped all around and have to react in an animalistic fashion. You know,
Hold on. Drop a 1 in the chat if you can identify with what Chaka's talking about tonight. I can identify with this. A lot of the time we feel money is going to solve all of our issues. Don't be quiet out there in the chat. Drop a 1 out there if you know that what he's saying, it resonates with you. We feel that the way out of our entire circumstance is money, and money's going to change it, and money's going to solve it. And maybe there's more information that we need to know. You are dropping gems tonight inside of this hour, and I want to know who else is feeling that resonance besides myself. Rastafari Ari Scott, she says number 1, without a doubt. Continue on, sir. You're talking about how you thought that money was going to address all of the ills that you felt in life. Go ahead.
So what I did is I put on blinders. Now, usually when a person reacts to trauma, there are 3 reactions. There's fight, flight, or freeze. Okay, those are the 3 reactions to trauma. However, another reaction to trauma is success. So during the time that I was going through the trauma that I was feeling, I didn't give myself an opportunity to feel any of it. I said, I got to keep going. I got to be successful. I got to keep going. I got to be successful. Here's somebody die over here. I got to keep going. I got to be successful. We lost our house. I can't pay attention to that. Got to keep going. Got to be successful. That was my whole mantra throughout my life, is that I have to be successful, because if I dropped out of school or allowed myself to feel what was going on in the time frame, it would have taken me off of my game plan. And I knew that in order for me to liberate not only myself but my family, I had to gain the education that was necessary to transcend my situation. So, you know, for a lot of African Americans, we are kept at a level of survival. And as long as we are kept at a level of survival where we're trying to survive, we're not thriving.
How are we kept at a level of survival? Break that down for us.
Well, you have to think about things. I'm trying not to go too far back.
No, go far.
Okay,
yeah.
I'm going to go far back. From the time that we were stolen from Africa,
okay,
and beaten into submission, those of us who did not jump overboard, we had to figure out how to survive in a land that was not our own, in order for us to be able to live and pass down, to have children and everything else. So we learned to adopt the posture that allows us to survive. Now, you come here to America, we have to work without the benefit of money or compensation, but survival. So we have to learn almost a defensive posture throughout life in order for us to survive. Now, during the time that we've been stolen, brought here from Africa, there were probably people who said, well, wait a minute, nobody's going to go for that. What's going to happen when they rebel? And those people said, well, don't worry about that. We're going to have a police force to buffer you and those people there. Meanwhile, there are so many associations made with our African American skin that don't allow us to rise up past a certain level. So if we go back in history, we were considered to be 3/5 of a man, and most of the advertising and everything else that you see, we were not human. And to some extent, people still don't see us as completely human. If you continue to show a person in one aspect, then people are gonna, that image is gonna be sealed in their mind. That's if right. We are kept at a level of surviving, and each time we are surviving, people are showing the things that we are doing to survive, then it's easy to make a case that this is what their nature is. But that's not what our nature is. We are talking about survival. If you and I are starving, okay, we are starving in a room, and both of us are hungry beyond measure, and someone throws a steak inside the room. We're not going to say, look, there's a steak here. Let me cut half of it. You take half. I take half. No, we're going to fight. We're going to probably kill each other for that stake.
Mm-hmm.
Now imagine if you add guns, you give one a gun. These are the things that we are dealing with. Society has maintained and kept us at a level of surviving, not providing a quality education to us to help us move forward and transcend a lot of the situations that we're dealt with. Drugs being injected into our community, guns being placed suspiciously around once again, so that now we are trying to have an arms race to keep the benefit of survival on our sides.
You said earlier that we identify problems in our communities, and through the divinity, the relationship with God, through introspection, we go out, if we are leaders, and develop solutions for the problems that we see. What solutions did you develop as a result of your observing these different tragedies happening in our community? What did you create? How did you respond to the problem that you're talking about tonight?
Well, first off, while I was going to school, W.E.B. Du Bois spoke about a talented tenth. And he spoke about how each person, African-American person, once they make it to a certain level, then they move out of the neighborhood and they take out of that neighborhood their education, their resources, and ways of helping their community. So there's a constant dilution of resources and of intelligence, of motivation and inspiration in the neighborhoods, because most people are moving to a prearranged neighborhood instead of making their own neighborhood what it is that they would move into if they were to leave. So very early on in college, I decided that once I moved into whatever neighborhood I lived in, I was going to stay there. I was not going to carry my resources out of the neighborhood, and I was going to work towards improving my neighborhood and making it to be something like a neighborhood that I would move to if I were to leave. Wow. So I dedicated my entire life's work to our young people. So every single job that I've had after college centered around young people. So that was how I maintained and tried to improve the situation in my community. So, I was a social worker in various different places, and foster care, and some of these non-secured detentional facilities, so many different things. Started a chess program, a chess mentoring program to teach children the game of life through the game of chess. Because
what's that? Break that down.
One of the things that I noticed is when I was talking to some of our young people about their future, that was ominous. That was something that they could not see. That's right then and there. But if I tell them, listen, you have to plan, and I take a piece off of the board and it's your own. See, our children are very, very competitive. They want to win all the time. So through the game, I can really talk about the paradigm of life. So if I'm telling you, you have to plan, that doesn't mean anything. But when I take a piece from you because you didn't plan, now that means something to you, because now your chances of winning are lessened. So now you start to think about what it is that I'm saying, and now it starts to have meaning. So once I have the paradigm, now I have your ear. After a while, after you continue to lose, I continue to build you up and tell you, you can do it. You just have to do this. You just have to do that. And eventually I'm able to funnel the life lessons through the game of chess.
I like this. I like this a lot, because we live in an information technology era where I respect my phone more than I respect my elders. I respect Google as a source of knowledge and inspiration more than I do my father, my uncle, my aunties, my mother, because I don't have to ask you. I can go to Google. And so therefore I can cut to the chase as a young person. I can literally look up how to make $1 million and follow that path, as opposed to leading the divine, listening to the divine inspiration that flows from my family members. I can take you for granted in a bad type of way. I can say, you're there. I'm going to go off and do my own thing for later for what you're talking about because my phone is informing me. But in the game of chess, all of that stops because I can't win at chess without the wisdom of the teacher. I can't circumvent defeat in this milieu of the chessboard. And so it brings back the respect factor. It brings back the deference. It brings back the admiration for my elders and for the people who are they're trying to give me the world. They're trying to teach me how to walk a straight line. They're trying to teach me how to grow up. And in the game of chess, it starts to make a lot more sense. Now, have you had success? Have you been able to like redirect a young person who was going in the wrong direction using the game of chess?
Absolutely. One of the sayings that I use all of the time is when the student is ready, the teacher appears.
Okay.
So you can give a young person knowledge all day, and it's not going to mean anything to them because there's no way to contextualize that information in their lives.
Mm-hmm.
So when you have the game of chess, now I can contextualize that information. So now I can funnel the information and the life lessons, and now they'll mean something because you can see it.
That's right.
It's no longer abstract. It's right here.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, I have used the game of chess to divert some of the paths of some young people and at least get them to start thinking before they make a move.
Right.
So one of the premises of the game of chess is don't think that everybody is stupid.
Right.
Because you're going to lose because people are not stupid.
Yeah, that's right.
So whatever it is that you do, it's going to cause a reaction. So
right.
the narrative is this: if you do this, what do you think I'm gonna do?
Right.
And if I do this, and if you do this, what do you think I'm gonna do? So it removes that paradigm for them to thinking that they're gonna be the only ones that are doing something.
Right.
I hear them say all of the time, I'm gonna punch you in your face,
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sitting there saying, okay, while you are punching this person in the face, what do you think they're doing? You think they're waiting for that to happen?
Right.
Because somewhere along the lines, there's a disconnect in terms of what other people are going to be doing in reaction to what it is that the person is doing.
That's
so,
right.
It allows them to at least see exactly what it is that's being talked about and at least think before you move.
What do you say to the people who look at your chess initiative and say, okay, but we've got gun issues out here in the streets. Our young people are still running around with guns in their hands, taking people's lives, and you're thinking that a game is going to make a difference. What do you say to those people?
Well, I say several things. A game is a child's work. So if you are teaching a child a game, that is their work.
Mm-hmm.
Adults have work, children have play. This is how you introduce certain concepts to them. Now, these things could at least get people to start thinking independently, thinking critically, thinking if I use this gun, what's going to happen next?
Right.
It reinforces the actions consequences dynamic. Now, in terms of the gun situation in our community, that is a far larger issue than I think that we are looking to deal with. I think that we are looking to deal with the symptoms of the situation as opposed to the root. A good portion of the things that we are facing in our society today as African Americans is trauma.
Okay.
We are not dealing with the root trauma that has been passed down generation after generation, that has been compacted and continues to grow in addition to our individual trauma that we experience. There is no vehicle, no avenue that is effectively dealing with that. Now we have some de facto ways in which to do that with our creativity and with our culture and with our art. So now you have a lot of brothers who want to be musicians, want to be rappers, want to be sports people. I mean, all of these things are just ways to deal with the trauma that there is in our lives. However, as a clinician, if we look at the Black community as a client that has been murdered, raped, live in impoverished situations, and you name it, use your imagination here. All of these things have happened to this one person, and no one has offered them any assistance.
That's right. Or protection.
Or protection, because it's still going on. So it's not even like something that you can say, well, let's forgive our enemy. Let's do this. We can't forgive. This stuff is still going on. The action has to stop. Then we can forgive after the action is stopped, and then we can move on. So
and we're down to the final 30 seconds of the show.
Okay.
I wish we had more time. In fact, we may even need to bring you back for a part 2 at some point in the future. You are it. If somebody wants to contact you to have more conversations, to hire you as a consultant, how can people contact you?
Instagram, I think, is probably one of the better ways.
Okay.
So Chaka Phaire, that's Chaka. Last name is Phaire. That's the same on all social media platforms. So Facebook, you can reach out to me on Facebook. Those are the best ways to get in contact with me.
Okay. Final 20 seconds of the show. What is survival to you?
Survival to me is just that. Survival is having the ability to live another day.
What is success to you?
Success, I believe, is doing anything on a continual basis and improving with every day. That's success. So
what is greatness
from
to
your
you?
mistakes. Greatness is when you realize that there is a life outside of yourself and you start to live for that purpose.
Chaka Phaire, I want to let you know that I've listened to your story today. We've listened to your story today. Appreciate the way that you synthesized your environments and created solutions for the problems that you saw. You brought a wealth of perspective today, and we're giving you your respect while you're on our show tonight. And we're giving you your crown today while you're still alive to receive it. Ladies and gentlemen, put your crown emojis into the chat. Ladies and gentlemen, put your crown emojis into the chat. We are letting the world know that you, Chaka Phaire, you are America's next motivator.
All right. Thank you. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
Absolutely. You got crowns coming into the building. Thanks for stopping by today, all right?
Okay. Praise God. Thank you for having me on your show. Thank you for introducing me to your platform. And I pray that we'll be able to do more wonderful work that has begun on this show. And thank you, brother. I certainly appreciated it.
Yes, sir. Talk to you later. Ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. Each and every episode of America's Next Motivator is going to have something here for you. All you got to do is stop by and pick it up.